Tim had always admired David. As boys, they were inseparable, two lads who spent every waking moment running through the fields, laughing at secret jokes, and daring each other to explore the farthest reaches of their small village. But what Tim remembered most about David wasn't their adventures, it was his kindness. David was the type of friend who made the world feel lighter, who gave more than he ever took, always putting others before himself. Tim used to wonder how David could be so selfless, how someone could care so deeply about everyone around him. Then one summer, David's family packed up and left without warning. Tim never fully understood why. There were rumors that David's father had found work in a distant city, or that the family had fallen on hard times and needed to start anew. But none of those answers ever felt right. One day, his best friend was there, and the next, he was gone. Years passed, and life moved on. Tim built a successful life for himself, owning a sprawling estate surrounded by orchards that stretched as far as the eye could see. With his wealth came workers and responsibility, a life of abundance, but one that left little room for friendship or memories of the past. Still, on quiet nights, he would sometimes think of David, wonder where life had taken him, whether they would ever meet again. But Tim didn't have time to reminisce. He had his own set of problems with a laborer named Matthew. Matthew was often late, and his pace was slower than the other workers tending to the fields. Tim found himself growing increasingly frustrated with Matthew's performance, often muttering under his breath about his slowness. "Why is he always late?" Tim would complain to his foreman. "Doesn't he realize how important it is to keep things running smoothly?" His irritation simmered as he watched Matthew struggle to keep up with the rest of the crew. "It's not that hard," Tim thought, shaking his head. "If he would just put in a little more effort, we wouldn't have these problems." Then, as if Matthew's slowness wasn't enough, something more troubling began to unfold. Produce from the orchards started disappearing, stolen under the cover of night. It began with a few apples here and there, but soon escalated into entire crates of fruit vanishing without a trace. Tim was determined to catch the thief and restore order to his estate. After several nights of watching and waiting, Tim finally set a trap. He dug a pit near the crates of fruit, covering it with branches and leaves to disguise it. Hiding nearby, he waited, ready to confront whoever was stealing from him. When the thief finally appeared, Tim's heart raced with excitement. He crept closer, ready to catch the culprit. But as the thief turned, Tim's heart sank. It was David. Tim couldn't believe his eyes. The boy he had admired for so long, the one who had always shown kindness and generosity, was now a man standing before him in tattered clothes, desperation etched across his face. Confusion washed over Tim. "David," he whispered, shock rendering him speechless. The years melted away, but the harsh reality of the moment settled in. He wanted to be angry, to demand answers, but all he could see was the friend he had lost. David looked up, his expression a mixture of shame and relief. "I didn't know it was you, Tim," he said softly. "I've been struggling since my parents passed away. I tried to find work, but no one would give me a chance. I didn't want to steal, but I was desperate." As David spoke, Tim's heart softened. The memories of their childhood friendship flooded back, how David had always been there for others, how he had given so much of himself. Tim realized that the person he had judged so harshly was the same person he had once admired. "Why didn't you reach out?" Tim asked, trying to understand. "I would have helped you." "I thought you'd be disappointed in me," David replied, shame creeping into his voice. "I didn't want to drag you down with my problems." Tim took a deep breath, the weight of judgment lifting off his shoulders. "You're not a burden, David. We all have our struggles. You're welcome to work here. We can figure this out together." Over the next few weeks, David joined the crew, and Tim watched him slowly regain his confidence. He had a natural talent for the work, and it was clear he was eager to make amends. Tim also noticed how David and Matthew began to bond, sharing stories during their breaks. It was during one of these moments that Tim overheard Matthew talking about his own struggles. "I just wish things were easier," Matthew said, his voice laced with frustration. "My wife is sick, and I'm trying to care for my mother too. It's hard to keep up with everything." Tim realized how quick he had been to judge Matthew for his lateness and slow work. He had assumed the worst without knowing the full story. Inspired by his renewed friendship with David, Tim approached Matthew the next day. "Hey, Matthew," Tim said gently. "I wanted to apologize. I know I haven't been fair. If you're ever having a tough day, just let me know. I want to help." Matthew looked up, surprise etched on his face. "Really? You mean it?" "Of course," Tim replied, feeling a sense of relief wash over him. "Let's work together to find a way to lighten everyone's load around here." From that day forward, Tim made it a point to connect with his workers on a personal level. He learned about their lives, their struggles, and their dreams. He fostered an environment where everyone felt comfortable sharing their burdens. He found himself laughing and talking with them more, creating a sense of camaraderie he hadn't realized was missing. Through his friendship with David and his willingness to learn from Matthew, Tim transformed not just his orchard, but his life. He learned that true strength lay not in judgment, but in compassion, in seeking to understand rather than criticize. And in doing so, he found a deeper sense of fulfillment, knowing he was not just a lord over his estate, but a mentor and friend to those around him. Together, they cultivated a spirit of support that lightened everyone's burdens, creating a thriving community where each person felt valued and understood.